Walk into just about any Muslim jewelry store today, from Cairo all the way to Jakarta, and you're going to see rows upon rows of these absolutely beautiful, polished red carnelian rings. You know the ones. They're universally known as akik. It's this incredibly widespread cultural practice for men to wear these red Yemeni rings. And if you ask why, well, you'll be told with absolute 100% confidence that it's to imitate the sunnah, the practice of the Prophet Muhammad, who supposedly wore one. So welcome to This Explainer. Today, our goal is to take that universally accepted belief and completely deconstruct it through some really rigorous historical scrutiny. Okay, let's dive right into this. Did he actually wear a red carnelian ring? I mean, it seems like a straightforward yes or no question, right? But the moment we peel back the layers of tradition and look at the actual evidence, we're going to shatter that illusion of certainty. Because as you'll see, the earliest rigorously authenticated sources tell a much more complicated story. So, on one hand, we have our modern cultural certainty. Millions of men wear these red carnelian rings as an unquestioned sunnah, right? It's a tangible, everyday connection to the Prophet's example. But on the other hand, we have what I like to call early hadith silence. In the absolute earliest, most rigorously authenticated historical sources, we're talking the collections of Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim from the 9th century. The specific word carnelian or red akik is glaringly absent. It's literally just not there. And this brilliantly illustrates the heart of the mystery. Let's act as historical detectives for a second. If we line up our two most trusted sources in Sunni Islam, they completely contradict each other. Sahih al-Bukhari tells us the stone was made of silver, yet Sahih Muslim tells us it was a silver ring with an Abyssinian stone. And the number of Sahih hadiths that actually mention red carnelian? Absolutely zero. No way, right? So how exactly did we get two entirely different descriptions from our absolute best sources, and somehow neither of them is the red stone we see everywhere today? Well, to understand this contradiction, we have to confront a massive historical reality, and that is a 200-year gap of purely oral transmission. We're looking at 2 whole centuries, stretching between the Prophet's passing in the year 632 CE and the compilation of these written hadith between 846 and 875 CE. Just think about what that 200-year gap actually looks like in practice. It's a truly incredible human effort. We are talking about the transmission of memories across 6 to 8 generations of narrators. It's this vast expanse of time where these reports were passed down orally from teacher to student year after year after year. Now, before you start thinking this was just some massive, unreliable game of telephone, let me reassure you, Islamic civilization didn't just abandon its history to the whims of human memory. They developed Ilm al-Rijal, the science of narrators. Every single person in these chains of transmission was rigorously evaluated. And the truly fascinating thing here is that the narrators describing the ring, men like Anas bin Malik, who personally served the Prophet, were universally graded as thiqa, meaning absolutely trustworthy. So the variations we're seeing, they aren't due to deception or fraud or weak memorizers. They're simply the result of honest, natural human memory shifting over decades. But there is a dramatic pivot in our story that makes perfect memory basically impossible. Around the year 650 CE, during the Caliphate of Uthman, an absolute disaster struck. The ring, which was actually being used as the official state seal, fell into the well of Eris. According to Sahih al-Bukhari, they were terrified. I mean, they searched for 3 days without pause. They literally drew out all the water, they sieved through the mud and the sand, but they just couldn't find it. The physical evidence was gone forever. And I really want to highlight why this matters so much. From that exact moment in 650 CE onward, anyone describing the ring was relying entirely on decades-old memories. If there was a disagreement, they couldn't just go look at the ring to double-check. And remember, during the Prophet's life, this was a highly practical object used to stamp letters to foreign kings. It hadn't yet become this venerated holy relic. People weren't intensely memorizing the precise mineralogy of the stone when they casually saw it on his hand. So what does this all mean for the scholars? What did classical scholars actually do with this missing evidence? We have contradictory reports from incredibly trustworthy narrators about an object sitting at the bottom of a well. Well, the great minds of the classical Islamic tradition, scholars like al-Nawawi and Ibn Hajar, they didn't just sweep these contradictions under the rug. They actively rolled up their sleeves and tried to solve the mystery. The theories they came up with are honestly incredible. Al-Bayhaqi thought, hey, maybe there were two completely different rings. Al-Nawawi gave several linguistic interpretations of the word Abyssinian. Al-Suyuti read it as a green chrysolite stone. Ibn Hajar brilliantly proposed that maybe the stone was silver, but worked in an Abyssinian style of craftsmanship. And Ali al-Qadi suggested the stone wasn't even separate at all, but perfectly integrated silver. Notice something absolutely vital here, though. Not a single one of these towering intellects claimed absolute certainty about the stone being red carnelian. They were all offering highly educated, scholarly guesses. So, the crucial point is that this entire mystery hinges on one incredibly ambiguous word: Habashi or Abyssinian. This term could mean the stone was physically mined in Abyssinia, but it could also refer to a black color, because Abyssinians were described as dark-skinned in classical Arabic. Or it could refer to an Abyssinian style of engraving, or even an Abyssinian maker. This single, highly ambiguous word sparked literally centuries of linguistic and geological debate. Geologically speaking, carnelian is a translucent red and was heavily mined in Yemen. But consider onyx for a second. It's banded black and white, and it was heavily mined in Abyssinia in antiquity. If the Arabic word habashi pointed to something black or from Abyssinia, onyx might actually be a much, much stronger linguistic candidate than the famous red carnelian. Or, maybe it was green chrysolite, or just metallic silver. Now, the classical tradition was remarkably honest about this whole situation. When all the reconciliations were attempted and didn't quite fit, hadith classifiers gave this text a very specific label, murtalib. This literally means the text is shaken or unsettled. It proves that because equally trustworthy narrators gave different descriptions of a permanently lost object, absolute definitive certainty about the stone is historically unachievable. They essentially admitted defeat, and they did it gracefully. Let's move to and see how this builds into the modern phenomenon we see today. How in the world did we go from an unsettled text to millions of people being absolutely certain it was Red Akik? Well, it's a fascinating historical game of telephone. Back in the 13th century, Al-Nawawi suggested carnelian as just one possibility among many others. Over the centuries, later scholars began to favor it, mostly just because Red Akik was culturally valuable and easily available from Yemeni mines. And by the time we hit the modern era, the word possibly completely vanished. A cautious 13th century scholarly hypothesis hardened into an undisputed, unquestioned modern fact. And if you need final proof of this, just listen to this devastating admission from the deeply respected classical Shafi'i commentator Sheikh Abdullah al-Laji. He said, "Everything that has been transmitted of prophetic sayings concerning carnelian rings, indeed none of it is authenticated." The scholarly tradition itself concedes the verdict. The specific claim about red Yemeni akik has absolutely no secure basis in authentic hadith. So, what should you take away from this explainer? Really, honest uncertainty is the proper historical conclusion here. Wearing a red carnelian ring today is a beautiful cultural tradition. It's a wonderful personal devotion that connects millions of people to their faith, for sure. But historically speaking, it should not be treated as a rigorously authenticated sunnah. We just don't know for sure what the stone was. Which leaves us with this final, kind of provocative thought. If a detail as universally accepted and visually iconic as the Prophet's red ring turns out to be a product of a centuries-long game of telephone, how many other rock-solid historical certainties in our lives are actually just centuries of accumulated assumptions? It's a great reminder to always stay intellectually curious and to always look closely at the primary sources.